Okay, we will go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Jamie Staten and I'm the Family Engagement Specialist here at Trecca. We do have several of our teaching staff here today and our counselors that are going to help us walk us through these topics. They will have some time for questions throughout the session, so you can kind of wait at that time for your question. And at that time, you can either unmute your microphone or put your question in the chat box, whatever you are comfortable with. But today we'll be talking about student and family preparation before the test, tips for during the test, test anxiety. We'll be talking about Launchpad and then how to interpret test results. And we have Mrs. Kearns, Mr. Miller from our teaching staff, and then Mrs. Ballinger and Mrs. Tafe from our school counselor staff. And they are going to be talking about these topics with you. So at this time, I will go ahead and hand it over to them.
Thanks, Ms. Staten. Good morning. My name is Mr. Miller. I teach up at the high school, so I apologize if this is a little bit geared more toward high school students. I teach American history and psychology, just a little bit of background. So I'll go through some tips about preparing for the Ohio State tests that you'll all see in the next couple weeks, your students. So a lot of the teachers will be post different sites. I'm usually at a library up in Northeast Ohio. So we kind of see firsthand some of the ways to successfully prepare your student for testing, so that we kind of try to bring some personal experience to this. So hopefully we can have that included in some of the slides that you see coming up. So a couple of these to go through. We're talking about before the test tips, and testing starts, I believe, at the end of March. So we're still a couple weeks away, but it won't hurt to go over these with your students, with your student. Number one is getting enough rest. I know just from looking at when students turn in work in my classes, some of them are 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning. So I would really stress for maybe a week or so before testing, maybe even more, just try to get some sleep the night before. 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep would really, really help. I know when I don't get enough sleep, I lose focus pretty easily. So it's trying to get a good night's sleep before. And then one of the tips that we have here is setting an alarm. You could have them have their phone or some sort of alarm, or try to get them up at the same time a week or so before the test to get their bodies used to it. Also, meals. Having a good breakfast gives you a lot of energy. I know some students we have, depending on the test site, they'll bring a large coffee or a sugary drink. I would try to avoid that if you can. I just know, just speaking about myself, having a really large coffee right before a test makes me kind of anxious. So I don't know the effect that it might have on your student if they drink coffee or anything like that. I would suggest water, a nice cold bottle of water or something to bring to the site if the site allows it. And then the other before the test tip we have here is planning some sort of a reward afterwards, going to get a special drink or a special meal or something, just as an incentive to say that, hey, you took a test today, you did a great job, you woke up, you came to the test site, you did your best as a student here at Trecca. So planning some sort of reward would be great. Kind of touched on this already, pre-test rituals. You know your students better than we do. What are some things that you could get them into the habit of a week or two before, some kind of pre-test ritual to kind of reduce the stress? We know just from talking to students when they come into the sites that it can be kind of stressful. It's out of their comfort zone. So what can you do to help them kind of reduce stress Is it music, taking a walk, watching a favorite show or something like that? And then the one in the middle is finding out as much as you can about the graduation tests. Why are you taking it? Is it for a diagnostic reason? Is it for college readiness? Have those questions answered before. If you're not sure why they're taking the tests, contact the guidance counselor or your teachers or your students' teachers. They might ask you about it, and it would be helpful to know what the point is of these tests. And then there is so much help available through for the classes here at Trecca, and just by doing a Google search, there are practice tests with real questions going back to at least 2016 from what I know. So there's 7-8 years worth of practice questions that you can look at, and you can help your student go through them just so they're exposed to what they might see. Might be their first time taking it, so you just don't know. What can you bring to the test? If your student is asking you, have them bring their Trecca iPhone if they have one, and then layer. The room that I'm usually in, it can be, I swear, 60 degrees or 85 degrees. It just depends on the day. So I would say layer, and especially layer, assuming that it's going to be cold. So then they can take off a jacket or something like that when they get there. No need to bring their computer. No need to bring a calculator. We'll have all that stuff there. They'll get a Chromebook when they get to the test site, and then we have calculators there if they need a calculator, or if the test allows them to have a calculator. You'll be getting a letter or an email very soon. I'm not sure if those have come out yet, but that'll have the testing dates, times, location. One of the top tips I would say is, if you don't know where the test site is, try to, if you have time, plan a day or two early. Go to the site, see how long it takes. Usually where I am, the test starts at 10 in the morning. So every once in a while, we'll have a student coming in at 10:15, 10:30, and it just kind of, I know things happen, but it kind of throws off the student. They don't get a chance to pick their seat. They might have to sit where they don't want to sit. They might not have a chance to use the bathroom. They're already seeing everybody taking their test. So see if you can, if you have the time, if you're not sure where the test site is, take a day and go and see how long it takes to get to the site. Google Maps, there's a picture down there in the bottom right corner of a Google map of where the test site is. And then some sort of pickup plan for your student. The teachers there or the proctors there always will have a phone. So if you send your child and they don't have a phone, they can use ours for the most part to contact mom or dad or whoever is going to pick them up from the site that day. These are geared more toward your student, but if they're asking you questions about it, generally I would say the student has not been to the test site. So, and they might not know how to conduct themselves when they get there, especially the younger ones. So just be kind, considerate. I'm guessing they're not going to know anybody else in the room. So just explain to them, be quiet, be respectful. If they have any issues with anything, they can always contact or come up to one of the teachers that's at the site and ask if something odd is happening in the room. That's sort of the second bullet point there. Students are going to finish at different times. So it's I know just from taking tests myself, it can be a little distracting when students get up, they're done. Your student might be thinking, well, why are they done and I'm not done? Just try to talk to them about doing your own test on your own time. You're not being graded against other students. Doesn't matter how fast you go through it. Just take your time. The third one down there, another really important one, using the restroom before the test starts. and then getting there early to get their favorite seat. That might be way in the back. It might be on the side. The earlier they get there, the better chance they'll get a decent seat. They can send any last minute texts that they need and use the bathroom. And then, of course, stay calm, breathe, relax. That day is going to be out of their comfort zone just because they're used to being at home doing their schoolwork. So the better you prepare them, the easier of a day it'll be. So we'll toss it over to Mrs. Kearns. She'll go over a couple of the tips that we have for during the test itself.
Hello, my name is Shannon Kearns. I teach math at the high school level here at Trecca. So some of you might have students in my class or will soon or at some point. Just to piggyback off of what Mr. Miller was saying, we're very aware that this is not a typical environment for your child. Your child schools at home every day. I live in the Cleveland area, and my testing location is a suburb called Mentor. I'm at the Mentor Library. Maybe some of you will be there, some of you won't. But all the testing sites are staffed with teachers like me. We all know that, we might get a third grader, we might get a ninth grader, and we're ready for your child. So if you have any concerns when you walk them in, just make sure you let the teacher know that's in the room. But we do our best to make the room inviting and comfortable for your child. I just want to make sure. I know that there's some new parents in here, and I want you to understand how it rolls. So during the test, develop a process for taking the tests. Use strategies to help navigate the test, and basically just use whatever you know. Let's go to the next slide. There's a lot more good stuff on the next slide. Okay. When the child enters the test, we give scratch paper to everybody, and we'll give them some pencils. We encourage them to write down anything that's in their brain, like, oh, I don't want to forget this, or I don't want to forget this. The high school math tests do come equipped with a reference sheet, so they're not going to have to memorize formulas or anything. But if they want to write any little note to themselves, I would encourage them to do that when we hand them the paper. And sometimes we tell the kids, just maybe write yourself just a little good luck message, so when you get stressed out, you can reread it and get focused. Sometimes that helps. Use the built-in test tools. Like I said, there's masking tools, there's highlighters, there's a digital notepad. I would recommend to the students to use the paper on their desk. But they can practice with those test tools as much as they want before they come take the test. But they are there, and we point them out when they come to the test site. Next. Okay. Read each question carefully. I think we all know that, and make sure they know that they have to answer every question. Some tests, they'll tell you don't answer the questions you don't know. Answer every single question in this case. And strategize for your multiple choice. So when you have a multiple choice question, if you read the answers and you think, geez, I don't know which one is the correct answer, make sure you talk to your child, tell them, eliminate answers that they know are for sure incorrect. And if you skip a question, you can mark it so you can go back to it. At the end of the test, they'll get something that has all the question numbers, and it'll say which ones they've marked to go back. So it helps to remind them before they submit the test. It's a really helpful tool. Next. Do not leave the essay blank. This is 1/3 of your test points when you're taking the writing test, or the English test, I should say. Students should use their best to answer the essay questions. Use paragraphs. Make sure your child knows to use paragraphs, and include details from the reading passage. So hopefully they know to go back to the reading passage and, take information out of that text and use that in their writing. Preview the essay prompt, look ahead to the essay question. They can start gathering ideas. They're going to have their note paper. If they need more paper, we can give it to them. I mean, they're equipped with all the tools to do well. So just make sure that they do not leave it blank. Sometimes they panic and they're just like, I'm not doing it. Don't please encourage them not to do that, not to take that route. It's okay to take breaks. Testing can be a long day. The students can take short breaks during the tests when needed. And then if they're at the high school, I think almost all of the tests have 2 parts. And if they want to break in between the parts, they just finish the part. They tell us they're going to go take a break. I know in my location, sometimes they like to go get a snack out of the vending machines or use the restroom, and then they come back and then we start them on part 2. That is completely acceptable. Like this says, consider a light snack in between tests. Some students pack food. In my testing site, we do not let them eat in the room. I would say that's pretty standard, but there's a little waiting room that parents sometimes sit outside. The students can eat their snacks outside of the room. It's just distracting to the other students. Like the testing room is no food or drink. That's all outside in the waiting room. So, and yeah, they usually have about 90 minutes per test, give or take. Sorry, that was on the last slide. Use all of the time. You don't have to rush. There's more than enough time for these students. I think they do a really nice job when they utilize the time that's given. And once again, don't leave anything blank. Just tell them they have to answer everything. Tell them to go slow, tell them to take breaks, tell them to doodle on their paper. Like, I'm a doodler. Sometimes I read a question and I swear it's written in a different language because I don't even know what it's saying. And I could stop and I could maybe like draw a little bit and then I focus again and I'm right back on track. Sometimes that helps them. Next. I mean, after the test, this says take time. This is for the student, obviously. Reflect, think positively, think about what you do differently on your next test. If I was the mom picking my kid up, I don't know if I would maybe lead with that question personally. But you know, I'm sure by the time that your child is done with the test, you can talk to them about it, how they did, how they felt, and remind them that it's over and it's out of their hands. So I think that's, you know, it's like when they tell you when you pick your kids up from sporting events, there's nothing to talk about. Just tell them, congratulations, you're done. They will receive gas cards when they're leaving, their little $5 gas cards. I think everybody receives those, correct? Jamie? Yes, yeah. So they're going to get a little $5 gas card that you can either use for gas if you need it, you know, to transport, or sometimes you can use it like for anything at the gas station. So it's just nice to get them out, get their gas card, and tell them good job and celebrate. Which leads me into, what about, isn't there test anxiety stuff? There we go. Do you want to go? Did you do the Launchpad stuff? Mr. Miller, did you already do that and I missed it?
No, why don't you head back 1 or 2 slides? I'll quickly go over the Launchpad stuff. So Launchpad, if you don't know what that is, it's just probably a 5-week or 6-week program that we've used the last 5-6 years to prepare students for whatever tests they're taking. So you can see the website is in pink on the screen. We've already gone through a few weeks of Launchpad. I'm one of the teachers that runs the American History Launchpad, but we have a bunch of different sessions. If you go to that website, there are Launchpads going, I think, from 3rd grade all the way up to the high school tests. So the good news is a lot of students are motivated by earning Gator Gold, which is just points that they positive when they demonstrate positive behaviors, like coming to a Launchpad session. They can earn pieces of Gator Gold, and then they can use those to redeem them later on in the year. But there are 3 different we call them missions. There's tutor-led missions, teacher-led missions, and then solo missions that they do on their own. But there, again, it's all explained on that the website that I think Mrs. Kearns put in the chat for us too, but you can see it there. Lots of information about the Launchpad. sessions. They're really helpful. It just, if anything, it gets your students to realize that testing is coming up and it's right around the corner, and it gives them an opportunity to ask teachers questions about tests. Sometimes we take a practice test. Sometimes it's going over prior questions, weird looking questions that your student might not have seen before. Sometimes a test will throw out some questions that kind of have an odd format. So it's nice to go over them in the Launchpad sessions, and we record them too. So for example, if you head over to American History, the recording should be in there. We've already done 3 of them. So there's a few more to go for Launchpad. So highly recommended, especially if your child is new to testing or if they're anxious, a little bit anxious about it. Speaking of anxious.
Exactly. So to touch a little bit on test anxiety, we are well aware that the students that enter our testing site, they're not showing up with excitement like they're coming to a birthday party. We know they're showing up for a test. Nobody shows up to take a test and like has zero anxiety. Everybody has a little bit of anxiety. It comes in all shapes and sizes. So the best thing that you can do, on your way to the test is maybe just distract them from their anxiousness. Like you can have the radio playing. You could talk to them about something completely unrelated, because at that point they're entering the test. There's nothing that can change that. So calming them down is the best thing that you can do to help them be successful. So as this says, a few nervous butterflies are normal. Sometimes a student's anxiety is extremely intense, but there's many ways to overcome that. There's 3 types of anxiety. There's physical, emotional, and behavioral. So physical, they'll get nauseous, their heart could be beating, they could be shaky. Emotional is when they are just constant worry, poor concentration, weak memory. And this is the category that is going to affect them in a negative aspect when taking the test. That's why I was saying, when you're driving to the test, the last thing you want to do is say, have you studied? Are you ready? Do you know the stuff? Like, none of those questions are going to help them be successful. Anything else unrelated is the best thing that you can talk about. And behavioral, lack of sleep, they're just going to shut down and be irritable. So those are all things that you might see a couple days before the test from your student. And this would be directed to your student. Remind them to take several deep breaths if they do get anxious. Like I said, they could doodle, they could have a little quote on their little paper. Just relax, close their eyes. Tell them to do that kind of stuff during the test if they do get stressed. And we will remind them of all of these things when they come to our test site. This positive self-talk is exactly what I was saying to put on their piece of paper. Like, I'm going to do my very best. Anything that they could write down, like to encourage them, will be very, very helpful. So that's what all of this is. I'll work hard to show what I know. I've studied hard and I've prepared for the test. So anything like that, at our test site, that's what we do. We tell them to do that, write that on their paper. And I think the counselors are going to take it from here.
I'm Mrs. Tafe. I'm the K-8 school counselor here at Trecca, and so I'm going to be talking about some testing interpretations for K-8. In the spring, the 3rd through 8th graders do their testing, and 3 through 8 do ELA, math, and the 5th and 8th graders also have the addition of science. So what you're seeing on the slide right now are the different categories of scores. So when your students take the test, they're going to have a score at the end, and what teachers like to see usually is 700 and up. So 700 being proficient, meaning that, they understood the material, and then, accomplished advanced means that they, did a really great job or they're advanced in that specific topic. So these are the graphs for science and math for scores. And the next slide shows ELA. So the different subjects sometimes have a little bit of a different score that would mean accomplished or advanced, but 700 is usually proficient and, where proficiency starts. So that's where teachers will kind of look for students to be. And if a student does have, basic or limited, that just shows them, okay, this is a subject that the student needs help in, and I need to give them more support. So, these Ohio State tests for 3rd through 8th are mostly just to show teachers, okay, who needs help, who is advanced in the subject. It's just to show them where your student is at. Next, we'll look at specifically 3rd grade. So this is the information from last year, it looks like. They have been adjusting the scores little by little every year for the 3rd grade guarantee. So this year, the promotion standard is actually 700. It's not 690 anymore. So the 3rd grade guarantee on the 3rd grade reading test would be 700 and not 690. So if your student reaches 700 or above, that means that they've met the 3rd grade guarantee score that they need for promotion. Now, if your student doesn't quite meet that score, but they meet the sub score of 50, so this year it's 50, not 48. If they meet the sub score of 50, they also will be, meet that promotion standard. So they look at the 3rd grade tests for ELA and reading a little bit differently based on, the qualifications for the 3rd grade guarantee. And then the next slide, we will look at the KRA. So the KRA, the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment, is done usually in September. The teachers and staff assess students in different areas, language and literacy, social foundations, mathematics, physical well-being, motor development, and they look at all of these things and they score it on, are they demonstrating readiness, approaching readiness, emerging readiness, and they turn them into the state, and then they kind of reassess at the end of the year to see, has the student improved. So this assessment is more of an observation assessment in watching students do different tasks. But this is usually done in the fall, but I do like to include it in our parent session every year, just so parents are aware. And next, I will hand it off to Mrs. Ballinger.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Ballinger. I'm a counselor for 9th through 12th grade students. I don't have all the students, but I have the alphabet, MI through SE last names. But your student does have a counselor. And if you have any questions after all this, feel free to talk to them. I'm going to talk briefly about how to interpret the high school test results, but then I'm going to talk at the end a little bit about just graduation requirements in general and how the testing fits into it. So how to interpret end of course exam results. Students in the class of 2023 and beyond, that's where we are right now with the permanent graduation requirements. There are basically 3 requirements of graduation. One is credits. They have to earn 20 credits. One is competency. One is readiness. The scores on the English 2 and the Algebra 1 EOCs, if they can score a 684 or higher on those, then they can meet the competency requirement for graduation. But by no means, that's not the only way to meet competency. It's sometimes the easiest way for some students, but I don't want any of you to make your student believe that if they do not earn that score, that they cannot graduate. That's just simply not true. But if they can earn that, then they can cross that off their graduation requirements, a 684 on both English 2 excuse me, English 2 and Algebra 1 EOCs. If they do not get that, they will have chances to retake it as well. For the American history, American government, and biology EOCs, if they can score a 700 or higher, they can potentially earn a graduation seal. That's the readiness that I talked about, the third requirement: credits, competency, readiness. For readiness, they have to earn 2 graduation seals. If they earn a 700 or above on the biology EOC, they will have the science seal. If they earn a 700 or above on American history and American government, they'll have the citizenship seal. Again, there are a lot of different seals that they can earn. So this isn't their only way to meet competency. It's just sometimes easiest because the tests are required to be given by the state. So if they can earn their seals this way, great. If not, we'll look at other seals. How can I see where my student stands toward state testing requirements? When you log into the parent portal, you'll see this screen, and you'll click on assessments. It's highlighted here in red, and it'll take you to where your student stands. But again, we don't expect you to have all of this memorized or necessarily be able to interpret all of it. Feel free at any time to reach out to the student's counselor. Or better yet, have the student reach out to their counselor because they need to start learning to self-advocate. That's always a great thing. But we're always willing to answer questions with this. This is kind of a little bit of what I just talked about. When you go into the parent portal, you'll see kind of their scores. On this slide, you'll see on the right-hand side, you see the columns for Algebra 1, Biology, ELA 2. ELA 1 is no longer required, by the way. That is an old exam that they're no longer required to take. They're required to take 6 exams altogether, state exams. That would be ELA 2, Algebra, Geometry, Biology, American History, and American Government. So altogether, they'll take 6. I'm taking this thing off. Altogether, they'll take 6, and they'll take them, when they're taking the course or when they just finished the course. So you'll kind of see their scores on there, and I don't expect you to remember the magic numbers of the 684 or the 700. We can always help you with that. Okay, before we do questions, I wanted to kind of highlight a couple of the things that Ms. Kearns talked about that are very important. She talked about when they're taking the test, about skipping a question and coming back to it. That is a great thing for her to say, because I'm also a testing proctor, and I'll see students get stuck on one question. And they'll sit there and stare at that question for 30 minutes, and they might know every question after that, but they can run out of time or run out of patience, run out of mental energy. Skip it. If they don't, please tell your student to skip the question if they're not sure, because they can move on and get all these other questions potentially correct, and the test will bring them back to those questions that they haven't answered yet. So you definitely want to keep moving on it. The other thing that I wanted to touch base on is make sure that they take their time. Just because Johnny gets up and leaves after 5 minutes, that doesn't necessarily mean Johnny's a genius and was able to get it all done. Maybe Johnny didn't want to take his time and didn't care to pass the test. So we are not comparing ourselves to other students in the room. And it is better if you know the answers, get them right. Take your time, get them right, and possibly be done ever taking that exam. We have students who they know it, they just don't feel like doing it. And so they want to leave as soon as possible. And then they have to come back and retake the test over and over when they really wouldn't have had to if they had just, taken their time and done their best. So those are 2 very important things that were kind of talked about that I feel like are very important to remember with this. So I think that's all I have. Ms. Staff.